Hello, I'm Roddy McDowall, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to a select group of most extraordinary women. Every one of these leading ladies brings to her work a unique style and irresistible presence, earning each of them an enduring legacy in the annals of filmmaking. Some I've had the privilege to know and work with. All are either nominees or winners of Academy Awards, and each plays an indispensable role in this captivating collection from Republic Pictures. So, now allow me to introduce you to these legendary ladies of the silver screen. At my home, I have a panorama photograph that was taken on the night of February the 26th, 1942. It shows the Biltmore Bowl in the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles, and among the celebrities cramming the room for the 14th Annual Academy Award ceremony, one can pick out Jack L. Warner, Cary Grant, Cecil B. DeMille, Jesse Lasky, George Powell, Gary Cooper, Mary Astor, Sidney Greenstreet, James Stewart, Anne Revere, Cesar Romero, Olivia de Havilland, Joan Fontaine, and a 13-year-old Roddy McDowall. Now, he was in attendance, as he had been one of the cast of one of the films nominated for Best Picture, How Green Was My Valley. And that same evening, Joan Fontaine won her Academy Award for her performance in Suspicion. The competition was formidable in all categories. In that year, 10 films were nominated for Best Picture. They were Blossoms in the Dust, Citizen Kane, Here Comes Mr. Jordan, Hold Back the Dawn, How Green Was My Valley, The Little Foxes, The Maltese Falcon, One Foot in Heaven, Sergeant York, and Suspicion. The leading women nominated were Bette Davis for The Little Foxes, Joan Fontaine for Suspicion, Greer Garson for Blossoms in the Dust, Olivia de Havilland for Hold Back the Dawn, and Barbara Stanwyck in Ball of Fire. In the leading man category, there was Gary Cooper for Sergeant York, Cary Grant for Penny Serenade, Walter Huston for All That Money Can Buy, Robert Montgomery for Here Comes Mr. Jordan, and Orson Welles in Citizen Kane. Certainly a formidable lineup. Just 2 months before the event, the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor, and just a few weeks previously, the much-loved and admired Carole Lombard had been killed in an airplane crash while on a war bond tour. The usual searchlights were not employed. The evening was dubbed a dinner, not a banquet, and for the first time, it was not a formal event, and ladies were requested not to wear orchids, but rather to donate the money to the Red Cross. Bette Davis was not only nominated, but had, in a flurry of bad publicity, just resigned as first woman president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. This was triggered when the Board of Governors refused to embrace her concept that the evening, for which the preceding 13 years had been a closed industry event, be open to the public with the proceeds from the sale of the $25 tickets going to British war relief. In this process, it seems that Miss Davis offended, among many, Mervyn LeRoy, Walter Wanger, and an angry Darryl Zanuck, who told her, quote, "If you resign, you will never work in this town again." Footnote. Bette Davis was employed by Darryl Zanuck 8 years later in the historic All About Eve. Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons were both stirring up trouble on every front, but their mischief hit a high note over 24-year-old Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. When How Green Was My Valley took its 7th Oscar as Best Picture of the Year, there was a rumble of displeasure from many quarters. Not because it wasn't a wonderful film by any means, but because Citizen Kane, one of the most astounding and innovative films ever made, had been virtually assassinated by the combined efforts of William Randolph Hearst and his sympathizers. Feeling that he was the target of the film, Hearst denied it advertising in his vast empire of papers and employed his immense influence to discredit it in every way possible. Before the movie opened, Nicholas Schenck the chairman of Loew's International, that controlled the distribution of MGM films, made an offer to the head of RKO, George Schaffer, on the behalf of Louis B. Mayer, which was unprecedented. He proffered $842,000 in relation to a movie that cost $686,000 if Schaffer would destroy all the prints and the negative. Well, it was not accepted, but the film had a very narrow release, and even though it championed in the long run, in its initial presentation it was all but buried. All this friction was in the air, along with yet another titillating issue. For the first time, two sisters were nominated as Best Actress. Olivia de Havilland for Hold Back the Dawn and Joan Fontaine for Suspicion. Both had been nominated before, de Havilland in 1939 in the supporting category as Melanie in the legendary Gone with the Wind. She lost to Hattie McDaniel in the same movie. Joan Fontaine, just the previous year, was nominated for Rebecca, when Ginger Rogers won for Kitty Foyle. So the atmosphere was heady. Born a year apart in Japan, both actresses had commenced their film work at about the same time, but by 1942, de Havilland had made 14 films, most of which gained her considerable attention and a very sound reputation. Even though Joan Fontaine had appeared in some 14 films prior to 1940, only her roles in The Women and Gunga Din had been of any note. Then, with her appearance in Rebecca, she was virtually careened to the position of a major star, and that was compounded the following year with her second Hitchcock film, Suspicion. It seems there was a crisis on the day of the awards when it was thought that Joan Fontaine was not going to attend, on the premise that she had an early call the next morning in Burbank. She was probably filming The Constant Nymph. According to her autobiography, she said her sister claimed that your absence will look odd, and following a protest that she had nothing to wear, Miss Fontaine writes, within an hour Olivia arrived with our usual saleslady from I. Magnan. The press have had a field day over the years in relation to the differences between the sisters, but whatever the truth, they both were shining forces when I saw them in that ballroom so many decades ago, and they both have enjoyed careers of immense merit. Joan Fontaine went on starring in movies until 1966, in features such as This Above All in 1942, The Constant Nymph, for which she received another Academy Award nomination in 1943. There was Jane Eyre with Orson Welles, released in 1944, and that same year, Frenchman's Creek. My personal favorite is this film, released in 1948, when she played Lisa Berndl in Max Ophuls' Letter from an Unknown Woman. It was produced by John Houseman with great intelligence. The director, Max Ophuls, was a master storyteller. When he died at age 55, he had a canon of admirable films, some of them classics, mostly directed in Germany and France. Movies such as La Ronde, Madame de, and Lola Montez. In Hollywood, he directed 4 English-speaking movies. This one, which was a 1948 release, had been preceded by The Exile with Douglas Fairbanks and 2 1949 releases which are fascinating, Court with James Mason and Barbara Bel Geddes and Robert Ryan, and The Reckless Moment with James Mason and Joan Bennett. The photography of Frank Planner is elegant and poetic. The film is steeped in atmosphere, and the theme is one of Ophuls' favorites, the misrecognition of a woman's true values and identity, and the process of adulation from a woman's standpoint. Letter from an Unknown Woman was not a commercial success when first released. It's wonderful that it survives as an example of expert direction with an adroit performance from the then new-find Louis Jourdan, and what I count to be Joan Fontaine's best performance.